Underwriting for the Money Doctor Show is provided by Ryan and Casey Liquors, Main Street, Greenfield. Exploring the world, one glass at a time. West County Equipment Rental of Shelburne. Daily, weekly, monthly rentals. 625-6463 or on the web at westcountyequipment.com. Weld Communications, Marketing and Publicity. Helping businesses spread the word in the Pioneer Valley and beyond. www.weldwords.com.
There's a better life if I could be debt-free, but all my money is a mystery. I was feeling overwhelmed and it was wearing thin when I knocked on the door and heard the doctor's in. Oh, the doctor's in, the doctor's in. She got the right prescription to help you win. Oh, the doctor's in, the money doctor's in.
Hello and welcome to the Money Doctor. I'm Dr. Frances Rayam, president of Power Down Debt, a positive debt management company. And if you're like me, you might have a little bit of a concern about where our education is headed for our children these days. I tend to get on a bit of a rant about it, and here to help me rant a bit, my guest, Marguerite Morris Willis. Welcome to the set.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Marguerite is the author of a book called A Grandmother's Essays on Education.
Ta-da.
Ta-da! Okay, I have to start by saying, I'm gonna go way out on a limb here. Everybody who knows me knows that I'm always pretty safe. I try to be Switzerland. I'm not really political about this stuff. I'm gonna flat out say, I love your book. I love the chutzpah behind your book.
Really?
Really. You talk about, in layman's language, what the problems are in education in our society and what you think might be some solutions. Well,
thank you. You know,
yeah,
that's what I was trying to
difficult.
do. I'm not trying to be the expert. I think we have enough of those out there. I am writing as a grandmother because I do believe that all, or certainly most grandparents have a lot to give to their grandchildren, but they also care about their future. Mm-hmm. And I think they might be interested in what's going on. But it's not a book for anyone from academia. It's not really a book for people in education, although I would encourage them to read it. It's for regular people.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit and say that, if I may,
all right.
And say that I think anybody could benefit by reading this. It isn't that it's the only viewpoint, but it's a very interesting viewpoint. And when I read it, I thought, this book is written just as a grandmother should be allowed to write a book.
Well, also, I don't think it has like one viewpoint. I raise a lot of questions. Yes. Clearly, I'm saying I'm not an expert. I'm not telling anyone what to do. Mm-hmm. Using that mode of grandmother's stories, looking at educational situations I've seen in my lifetime, I tell the stories. Because if the truth be told, I can bore people to tears with facts and figures. I'm a numbers person. I look at it.
Join the club.
And most people, oh, please, Marguerite, shut up. So I've taken the concept of storytelling and woven in a few numbers.
Yes.
But not to the point of turning people off.
It's certainly not heavy on statistics.
I use contemporary television and music.
Yes.
I go into a number of areas that people can relate to.
Family stories. Yeah.
And it's also how I read to my second graders. Yes. I've always found reading books in school. I remember as a child, oh my God, they're so boring. And they still are. So when I was invited to read to second graders, and I did that for about 7 years, I thought, what am I going to read to them? I like mysteries. Mm-hmm. I wonder if they would. Are there any series out there? And I found one, the A to Z Mysteries. That's the first one I used.
Right, that would be appropriate for their age group, right?
Appropriate for their age group. And it made reading fun instead of deadly, boring, stuff that we would have. And I would introduce them to a series of books, and I would give them permission. When you go into a library, how do you know if you want to read a book? I say, look at the picture here. Isn't that interesting? Does that tell you anything? Look at the back. Oh, it tells you a little bit about the story. Oh, let's open it up and say, oh my gosh, there's 20 books in this series. Oh, John, look, there's one here on baseball. You might like that. So in introducing them to a series, When any child would come in on a Monday and say they went to the library to get the next book
Right.
in this series, my work is done.
Exactly.
That's how you get them started.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've spent 30 years or so in the educational field as a teacher, as a board member. Right?
I taught in the private commercial sector, which is very, very different.
Okay.
It's interesting. Those who don't want to hear any criticism, they look at my book and the first question will say, "Did you teach?" That cannot be the only criteria for someone able to tell stories about education.
Agreed.
And, but it's another way to put someone down. You're not qualified to speak. I obviously don't accept that premise, or I wouldn't have proceeded with this.
Well, and your book certainly isn't, it's not berating teachers or, I mean, we all know teachers and educational professionals are trying to do their job, but in some way our system is broken.
The only criticism I have of teachers is that they're not speaking out as to what they're seeing. And education doesn't occur in a vacuum, it's within the larger society. And it has changed so dramatically, as the Greenfield community. When you start to look at all of these changes, are they for the better? My daughter is a teacher.
Yes.
And I have great admiration and respect for her. And that's always been our closest bond, discussing education. Every morning she calls me on her way to work just to check in, make sure I'm still breathing out there. We discuss, what's on her plate for the day.
Will you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, will you tell the story in your book about you and your daughters always agreed on all of this stuff until one conversation in the 70s, I think it was?
No, it was actually in the early 80s.
Early 80s, okay.
And I was doing a local cable access television show. And it was called The Political Hot Seat, and we discussed politics. I've always loved politics. And we were discussing the school budget. And I had always done the town side of government and left the school side to the experts. And I looked at this new field called SPED and the numbers, and watching the jump in the cost, and I questioned what was going on. I simply questioned what was going on.
That was it. That was all it took.
That was it. And I found out, one from my daughter, she wouldn't talk to me for days, because she was at that point considering being a SPED teacher. But I found out over the next few years, as I started to question things, that you weren't supposed to question anything. The powers to be, the authorities on high, were telling us how to live, and they had all the answers. And I would suggest, and I do in the book, if we had paid attention to Daniel Patrick Moynihan in 1965 when he questioned certain elements of the Great Society, we might not be in the place we are today. There's no question in my mind when you see that ad on TV at night that 1 in 4 children in America go to bed hungry. It is true, but why is it true? And we're not looking at the whole thing. So I don't do sound bites well. That's why I did a book. We need to have people sitting and reading and thinking and talking. What do you want for your family? What do you expect from education? What are they not able to do? What are you going to do to augment it? I think there's lessons to be learned from homeschoolers. If you see what's available on internet now.
I agree with you there. Yep.
Bill Gates is highly promoting Salman Khan, K-A-H-N. He has Khan Academy online for teaching math. So there's no reason for a child to struggle with math when he is a natural born teacher.
Yeah, he is,
and
really
some
is, yeah.
systems are starting to use that. So people have many, many more choices today. But what I see now, we've dumbed it down. It's a mile wide and maybe a ½ inch deep.
Yeah.
And people are going to have to decide where they want to bring depth in to their child or grandchild's education.
Yeah. Our producer, Chris Collins, is on a rant. He's in a twist over the MCAS scores. And what do you think about the MCAS scores being, the whole test being dumbed down, and still people can't, I don't know, read their grandmother's letters if I go off on the cursive teaching thing, or whatever the case is. Yeah, don't get me going, right?
Well,
exactly.
When MCAS, I was on the school committee at that time, and I felt there was a real knee-jerk reaction to it because of the amount of testing involved. and people were adamantly opposed to it. I suggested at that time that we attempt to understand why and where the demand came for the accountability, because we didn't have it. And if we understood that, I mean, our colleges were having to do remedial work. Even here at Greenfield Community College, they were writing stories about it in the 80s and the 90s.
Right.
So
insane.
there was a definite need for accountability, so they went in with their program. My major criticism of it was that it stated in 2014 we would have 100% proficiency. And I am personally opposed to unrealistic goal setting. A goal has to be one, measurable, doable, and obtainable. That was not going to happen, so that was a false expectation. And I knew as we got closer, you would start to see the waivers coming along. But in terms of the educational community's response to it, most people simply opposed it. We would have been in a better position to support it and say, but we will get back to you as we see how it plays out. There was no really built-in evaluation system. And my daughter, as a teacher in Greenfield, was asked to go before the school committee the first year. And her comments, in a nutshell, was, yes, it is good when you look at the curriculum guidelines. That's not the terminology they used for it. I'm forgetting what they called it. Doesn't matter.
It's okay.
In essence, it's good.
Right.
And some testing should be done. But I'll tell you what my first criticism is after the first year. The exams were age and grade inappropriate. Whoever wrote them that first year did not understand fourth grade and what they were dealing with. So you always have to have this push and pull. It's life, push and pull.
Right.
Whether you look at Chinese medicine, I don't care what aspect of life you look at, there's this push and pull. We're seeing it right now in Washington, and no one likes it. We expect it to be smooth. But we have freedom of the press so that people can talk about ideas. And I initially started to write this book thinking I would be advocating choice, per se, a voucher system.
Right.
But the more I got into it, I realized, no, that's not it. That's not enough. I broadened the focus and looked at larger social issues because of their direct impact on education. And I realized that people, if they're not aware, it's a matter of consciousness, that they have choices. If they just go along and do as they're told, you'll end up with a country like East Germany. When they attempted to unite, when they did successfully unite East Germany and West Germany, the problem was the East Germans were told, were used to being told how to live, where to work, and where to shop.
Right.
You lose
Structure. Right.
the ability to take care of yourself and to make conscious decisions.
Right, you adapt.
And sometimes I feel we're headed that way.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. You say this is life and it's a tug and a pull. There's a quote in your book that I liked that said, "Before any child ever enters a school, so much of that child's future successes will be determined to a great degree by what happens in the early childhood years from birth to 3 years. No school official can or will ever say that publicly." We have to take a break, but I want you to be prepared when we come back to talk more about that, because I hate to leave you hanging like that, but I want to build up that steam. I want to hear exactly what you're thinking about in that, and that is why I liked your book, because you really just say it as it is. You make no apologies for it. It's your opinion. You make that clear, but your book really begs the question, could we just have a conversation about this?
Great, I'm ready to talk.
When we're back in a moment.
Underwriting for the Money Doctor Show is provided by Ryan and Casey Liquors, Main Street, Greenfield. Exploring the world, one glass at a time. West County Equipment Rental of Shelburne. Daily, weekly, monthly rentals. 625-6463 or on the web at westcountyequipment.com. Weld Communications, Marketing and Publicity. Helping businesses spread the word in the Pioneer Valley and beyond. www.weldwords.com.
Welcome back to the Money Doctor Show. I'm here with Marguerite Morris Willis, author of A Grandmother's Essays on Education. So welcome back.
Good to be here.
Thanks.
Let's go. Hit me with that question again.
Before the break, just in case people are just joining us, I read a quote from your book that really was a hot spot to me, a hot point. It said, "Before any child ever enters a school, so much of that child's future successes will be determined to a great degree by what happens in the early childhood years from birth to 3 years. No school official can or will ever say that publicly. And this is why we started off with me saying, I love your book, I love the chutzpah behind it. You come out and say that.
Superintendent said, I was challenging him once, and he said, well, we can take them forward, we can build and make them better, but you're right. They will always be behind the 8 ball. And they don't say that because everyone's deathly afraid of being critical or presumed to be judgmental. We're afraid to have a candid conversation. And that was written in the context of preschool. I am very much a critic of preschool. I'm not opposed to the concept of preschool. I am a critic of how it's structured. It's not under the Department of Education, it's under the Department of Health and Human Services. And it's for children who are behind the 8 ball, but they're always striving for balance, so they allow children who don't need it, a small number in. So those who have a great need, they're attempting to address their needs, and the child who is ready to learn is held back. But the problem with preschool, it doesn't stay. The program will tell you it's great success within the first year, but if you dig down in Health and Human Services' own website, you find that by the end of 2nd grade, any benefits that have been accrued, they simply disappear. Let me give you a concrete example.
So you're saying it levels out in the 2nd grade?
No, they fall back to where they were.
Really?
Yes.
So they digress.
So let me give you an example of this and how it relates to families and parents. One year, a superintendent had all of the PE instructors from all the elementary schools in to speak to the school committee. And they were telling us that 50% of the kindergarten class then, this was in the 90s, required special education for physical activity.
Wow.
Well, wait, and I'm the annoying one. I'm the annoying. What do you mean?
Nature, right.
What do you mean? Well, they don't know how to roll a ball.
Wow.
They did not know
motor
how
skills.
to roll a ball.
How could that be?
I remember
How
so
could that
distinctly. My granddaughter is now 18, sitting on the floor, and you have your legs spread, and you show her, all right, I'm going to roll this to you and roll it back to mom. You're working on eye-hand coordination and brain development. So there is the example. And how can we tell if they've not had it? You don't need complicated tests. When a 3-year-old walks in, because they can go to school, preschool, if they're 3, if they have a lot of special needs, and at 4. All you have to do is hand the child a book upside down and backwards.
Right.
And if they don't do anything with it, you know they've never
They
seen a
haven't
book.
been read to, right.
A child who has been read to doesn't know how to read yet, probably, but visually knows what it should look like, and they immediately turn it right side up.
And may even open it and hand it back to you and say, read to me,
and
Mom.
they know what a book is. So, but meanwhile, while they're teaching the other children how to brush their teeth, a child that knows how to brush their teeth. So we're so afraid to do any kind of ability grouping. And we're harming.
It's all politically incorrect to have these classes, right?
We're harming children. If we do it in math, we do it in reading, why not let children go as far as they can? Particularly in math, when you see what our math scores are and how we relate to the rest of the world. We had a program that was developed for SPED. It was called Accelerated Math. And because one of our schools was eligible under the poverty guidelines, we had the material and everyone could use it. And we had a 4th grader doing 7th grade math.
Right.
Yay!
Yes.
Why would you not allow children to go at their own speed? And those who need the remedial work, we wait too long to identify it. I say the 3-year-old that doesn't know the front of a book from the back of a book, right off the bat tells you what we need to start to do immediately. But
so how do you answer that question when you say that and someone says, but we can't, to use an obvious example, we can't keep score in t-ball because somebody's feelings will be hurt if they're not a good player. How do you answer that when someone says that to you about education? We cannot separate our children and let the 4th grader who's doing the 7th grade math be put over here and you know.
Well, there is an answer to that.
And promote it.
If your surgeon went to a school where they gave everyone the same grade, are you going to be happy with that? Or do you look for a surgeon who is highly qualified? we have to get away from, a lot of this is just political nonsense.
Right.
We're losing our competitive edge.
That's what I was just going to say. Don't you think there was a benefit to that competitive edge?
Yeah,
right.
we are losing it, and we need to realize how that's harming the whole country.
Right. So who gets marginalized in this school system? How does that happen?
It can occur at any particular level. Particularly bright students, I see at the elementary level are marginalized because they're not challenged.
Right.
And I feel that the whole tone and tenor of a child's education is set at the elementary level. And if they learn at that age that they can coast and they don't have to work hard, they're not going to. How do I know that? Personally, I have a little grandson who sets the bar for the class, but his teacher says he's not challenging himself. And so we are working on the side, attempting, where they feel, I'm a great fan of magazines, and I make that clear in the book.
Yes.
There is Which Way USA, which is a great magazine for children in the 3rd and 4th grade, introducing them to geography and maps.
Wait, geography? They teach geography in school still?
Well,
it isn't so, Marguerite.
Now they realize, because your generation has no interest in world affairs because you don't know the world, they've realized that maybe we need to teach geography again to understand. I'm of an age where we grew up being told, finish all the food on your plate because there's hungry children in China.
Right.
And now what we need to be saying is do all your homework because there are hungry children in China, in India, who want your jobs.
Yes.
It's a fact.
It is, yeah. They
But
not
at the
only
same
want your
time-
jobs, they've got them already, and we're just trying to get them back.
But at the same, in terms of who gets marginalized, I don't want anyone to walk away thinking this is just about college-bound students.
No, actually, a lot of this is about
when I was
young
writing the
kids.
book and setting up the chapters, I had one, you go to college, and it was followed by get a job, and I realized, I've fallen into the same trap. Really, we need to talk about work first and then education. And I highlight my late brother, who was not considered successful in school. My mother dragged him through high school just to get that diploma. He became one of the most financially successful people and had his own business and did extremely well. And I also highlight
and he's happy, I hope.
He became very happy.
Good.
Good. And he learned that he was smart because a lot of people who had fancy degrees did not know as much about life as he did.
Yep.
And he was a man of great common sense and wisdom and taught me a lot. But I also use someone from your generation who did not go to the tech school and probably should have, but he went to Mohawk because he wanted to play football. And we have to understand what motivates kids.
Oh, sure.
He now has his own home business, and he was building his barn. And all the buddies came with their tools. Everyone bring, a barn raising. And one young neighbor, also a friend, happened to be an engineer. So he said, well, let me see the plans. And my neighbor picked up a 2x4 in his carpet, and well, I want it to look like this. And all the guys looked at it, got it. And that's what they built from.
Yep.
And it is one of the most beautiful barns on Route 2, the Scenic Mohawk Trail in Charlemont right now. So my mother used to talk about street smart. So I have a chapter in there, School Stupid, Street Smart.
Yep.
And when I talk about people getting marginalized, we talk in education about multiple intelligences, but we really don't recognize them or know what to do with them.
Right.
We talk about reading.
Yes.
Who reads these days? If you did a survey of teachers, tell me what book you've read in the last month, you're going to find that they haven't. People aren't reading, and yet we test them on reading. I make a strong argument for the graphic novel in the book because they should be assigned to summer reading. Kids, if you understand the various intelligences, they could do Julius Caesar in a graphic novel, what we used to call comic books. They understand ambition, they understand betrayal. So if they have to read that and then have a class discussion, have they gotten the essence of Julius Caesar? What is it we want?
Right.
If it's just grammar, then we're in trouble because grammar and spelling, if you look at emails and Twitter and 140 characters,
Forget it. Yeah, terrible.
It's like the educational system's in conflict with the real world where they're living.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying do away with this, but how do we bring it?
How do we wrap it up? Right.
Bring it in
together,
so that it has some meaning for them.
Sure.
And I highly recommend Khan Academy online, KAHN. And the man is a genius.
That brings us to the idea of virtual schools. And is virtual schools really the way of the future? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's somewhat of a takeoff on the homeschooling model, which has been around. And there are national organizations that people can plug into. The problem we have in West County is you have to have internet access, and that's going to be, I wish the stimulus money had been used differently. Had we used it to bring in internet access to rural areas, it would have been of a greater value, I think. But that said, I think there will be a place for virtual schools. It won't be for everyone. Again, our tendency is to look for one answer. And I'm suggesting a monolithic system or one answer won't work. It'll be, again, the same problem. That's why I suggest very strongly people have to think about what's important to them, what do they want for their family, what choices do they have where they live, what choices do they have in entertainment that they provide to their children.
Right.
Do they want them to know? I talk about the Bible versus Western Civ in here. Dangerous subject to mention in our religion and society today. But I'm fearful for the younger ones not recognizing when politicians are quoting that 400-year-old document, the King James Bible, and sounding elegant, and the kids have no knowledge of the source. Yeah. It's part of our Western Civ. So there's a lot of things that people can decide for themselves within their family, what is important. Do you want them to know cursive handwriting?
Yes.
You can do that online. You can buy workbooks.
I do. I want our kids to be able to read their grandmother's letters. I'm sorry, but they have to be able to do it.
But it's more than that. If you go back, there is a relationship between eye-hand coordination and brain development. And I don't want to make it complicated. They need to know how to do that. So when we were doing these exercises before you even did the letters, it served a purpose.
Yes.
But also the loss,
so we lost it,
the genealogical loss, that to me is sad.
That's what I think too.
I mean, I can read the old census data from the 19th century.
Yeah. If you're researching your house and you go back to deeds, all of that sort of thing. So we're almost out of time. I want to make sure we give you time to be able to tell people where you get your book. I know we could talk forever, but I want to give this one quotation in closing from your book as well. And it says, "This is the information age, yet the problem is a loss of knowledge." And I don't think that we could wrap up your book any more succinctly than that. But please tell us, one thing I asked you off camera was, how do we get your book? And I thought it was so refreshing that you said the library.
Well, I have given a copy to the Greenfield Library and all the libraries in West County.
Yes.
It's available at local bookstores such as World Eye in Greenfield, Boswell's in Shelburne, and A.L. Avery's General Store in Charlemont actually has a space on one of their shelves for local authors. God bless them, they're terrific. So you can buy it locally. You can buy it on Amazon.com. You can also, if you have any kind of device, with a Kindle app, you can get it, a Kindle version. But also, if you do have a Kindle app, Kindle has a lending library. Wonderful. So you can buy, it's $9.95. It cannot get any cheaper than that. Or you can read it for free online or from a local library.
Gotta love it. And can they contact you if they want to?
Sure, Marguerite Morris Willis at gmail.com.
Perfect. Marguerite, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
I wish we had more time to rant. My guest has been Marguerite Morris Willis. Thank you for watching another episode of The Money Doctor Show. Until our next chat, I'm reminding you to keep it positive.
There's a better life if I could be debt free, but all my money is a mystery. I was feeling overwhelmed and it was wearing thin when I knocked on the door and heard the doctor's in. Oh, the doctor's in, the doctor's in. She got the right prescription to help you win. Oh, the doctor's in, the money doctor's in.